Okay, so we're recording now. So this is our agent development for May 2021, and we're covering advertising, fair housing best practices and ethics. And we'll start off by reviewing just some kind of basic things about fair housing, but it's a good reminder as to why this is all really important. And so first, and this will probably be fresher for you, Haley and Barbara, since you guys both just went through pre-license training. But for those of us that have been around a long time, it's definitely easier to forget. The federally protected classes are race, color, national origin, religion, disability, sex, and familial status. And then under Washington state law, there's additional classes that are protected. Those are creed, marital status, sexual orientation, gender identity, HIV, AIDS, and hepatitis C status, veteran military status, citizenship or immigration status, and source of income. So those are all things to keep in mind because we can't discriminate against anyone for any of those reasons. And then in general, in a couple of the classes that I attended, it was recommended that you have the fair housing logo on all of your advertising, including flyers. And I think that in our Remax megaphone system, I think it's there by default and you can either select to have it removed or something. So just something to be aware of the next time you're in there is apparently it's recommended that we have that fair housing logo and everything because then it shows that we're trying to be fair housing compliant. And then the Federal Fair Housing Act specifically says that it's unlawful to make, print, or publish any notice, statement, or advertisement with respect to the sale or rental of a dwelling that indicates any preference, limitation, or discrimination because of race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, or national origin, or intention to make any such preference, limitation, or discrimination. So it is lawful to advertise in such a way that attracts or includes families or people with disabilities, though. So you could say that this home is accessible for people with disabilities. You can say this home is accessible to people who are mobility impaired. You can say families are welcome. There's a playground in the neighborhood. I don't know about that one. Like for me personally, when it comes to playgrounds and things, like I'll always take photos of neighborhood playgrounds and include them in the photos. And maybe I'll make a mention of it in the marketing marks, but I tend to just keep the word families out of it too, because I know with myself not even being able to have kids, and now it seems like I know a lot of people that can't have kids or choosing not to have kids, that not everyone's necessarily looking for that anyways. So I don't specifically try to advertise or market to that.
Yeah.
The main thing in all advertising is to remember to be marketing the property itself and not necessarily who should live there. And I think that that's why I've always felt like, why would you ever use the word families then, right? Because a feature may be a playground in the backyard or a playground in the neighborhood. So you can talk about that, but it shouldn't be about who could live there. So you could say that a condo unit features state-of-the-art internet access and other high-tech features, but you wouldn't want to say condo unit perfect for mature adults. Or you could say the street in front of this home is a busy arterial. The property is not fenced. Okay, I don't know that I would say that, but those are facts. Yeah. So you could state that, but you wouldn't want to say with kids, you may prefer a home on a street that is not quite so busy. I don't know that anybody would say that either, but I think you guys kind of get the idea, right? Yeah. So again, sticking to facts, not about who the home may or may not be good for, and also not opinions too. And then it was brought up that there's some terms that are still around, and I know they're still in the MLS, but it was just brought up, why are we still using them? Like master bedroom, why are we still using that word? in fact, I've been meaning to do a speak up to the MLS, but I haven't, because I know on the Zillow 3D home tour app that I use, they don't have that as an option. They call it primary bedroom. And so that's what I'm starting to call it, is primary bedroom. But it's kind of dumb when the MLS has a master bedroom field, So I'm thinking they're probably going to change that. Family room is another one. Yeah, I guess you shouldn't technically have a family room, although it's weird because, we don't have kids. We call ours still a family room.
Yeah.
I don't have a good option for that one. Do you have one?
Living room? Or
Well, if you have a living room, what would you call the second one? It's always been a family
living space.
Yeah. So
room.
maybe the MLS will come up with another option for that one too. Or like walk-in closet, that's definitely a field on the MLS. But again, and I might have mentioned this to you and Barbara before, I know that the MLS warned me once, because I had in my marketing remarks that it was about the Liberty Lake condos actually, and how they were walking distance to something, but that's discriminatory because not everybody can walk. So we shouldn't really be using the term walk-in closet.
Yeah.
And during class, people just talked about saying it's a large closet, maybe with built-ins or organizers, that sort of thing, we shouldn't be saying it's walking distance to schools. So like now I usually just say that it's near something or within blocks, right? Because within blocks, well, that's whether you're walking on a scooter, bike, car, or whatever. That's a physical distance, so that works. And then the other thing we should be aware of is desirable neighborhood, because who is it really desirable for, right?
Yeah.
So those are kind of the basics as far as advertising and ensuring that you're fair housing compliant, which is pretty important. We'll move into love letters now. So I know you and I have talked a bit about this over the last several months. Well, and then, in all three of your winning cases, you didn't use buyer letters. And I've been winning without them too. And so I think, kind of like we've talked about before, it all just goes down to everything else that you're doing. It's all the communication before you're writing the offer, as you're sending the offer, all that sort of stuff. And then for me, I'm not really consistent on it, but I know the last couple times I submitted offers, I specifically said, to ensure that there weren't any fair housing violations, my buyers are not including a letter. So I just address it up front. So in case that listing agent is getting other letters, they know why we haven't included one. And it's kind of a reminder of why we didn't, So I guess just real briefly for Barbara, from a buyer's perspective, why would you use them? Well, it's because sometimes when you get down to it, the terms are going to be similar, right? And so buyers want to help themselves stand out and maybe try to find some sort of commonality with the seller to try to get their offer chosen. But of course, while they're writing their letter, and especially if they're including a photo, it's going to violate fair housing for sure. So the National Association of Realtors has some recommendations to protect us and our clients against the potential liability for using buyer love letters, because if we do, then we can become liable for them. So these are what they consider to be the best practices. Educate your clients about the fair housing laws and pitfalls of buyer love letters. And I think that can just be as simple as reminding them about fair housing, and that if they were to include a letter, then it would be in violation of that. It doesn't really require much of an explanation. Most people would be like, oh yeah, okay. And then if necessary, inform your clients that you're, oh, hold on a minute. I'm just realizing. So this is where it gets different. So NAR and our E&O insurance policy will not cover us if we deliver buyer love letters. So I guess that's good for you to know. But the problem is that Washington state agency law requires that if our buyers write a letter, that we deliver it, because Washington agency law requires that no matter who we represent, buyer or seller, we are to provide all forms of communication to the other side, meaning that even if our buyer writes a letter against our advice and is going to violate fair housing, we still have to deliver it. So that's kind of the tricky thing, is that it's not ethical, it's not recommended, but we would need to do it. So that's why then it's even more important that you just advise your clients not to do it, and then let them know that to be compliant, what we can do is, you can tell me, or you yourself could confirm with them what they believe are their favorite features of the condo or house, right? And why this is the one and why they're writing an offer. And then you can include that in the email.
Yeah.
But we definitely cannot help draft them. And then also, if you receive a letter, either as a seller's agent or as a buyer's agent, we aren't supposed to be reading them.
Okay.
Because once we read it, then we're going to be more of a participant in the activity. Moving into then how, so I guess I'll ask you, does that answer all of the questions that you have regarding like representing buyers and how to handle it if a buyer wants to write a love letter?
Yeah.
Okay. So then as far as sellers, in working with sellers, that's where it becomes a little more tricky, because what we're being advised by the National Association of Realtors and our insurance carrier is that we shouldn't be receiving them either. But of course, at the same time, Washington agency law says that if we receive a letter, we have to pass it on. So the recommended practice then is that, and there was kind of this paper example given where if you receive a letter, then you put it in a sealed envelope and you don't read it, but then you mail that sealed envelope with all the possible letters you received to your seller after they've chosen an offer. But that is so old school. I think we get everything via email now.
Yeah.
So I think what you would need to do is, if you received a letter, hopefully it's going to be labeled that in an email. Although I think I told you recently I received one and it was like stuck right after the first page of the purchase and sale agreement, purposely probably snuck right in there.
Yeah.
So as soon as I saw it, then I didn't look at it and I saved the file without that page. And then I saved that page separately. So I explained that because again, you don't want to read it, but you've got to keep, so you've got to do what you can to separate that page out and save it in a folder then on your computer. And then probably just have a folder for letters that you get. And I guess I should explain that, this was on that townhome in Tacoma and I received 10 offers, and I had it specifically in the listing that the sellers weren't going to review letters, but this agent snuck it in anyways. So I say that because we can't control what other agents do.
Right.
So if you get one, you've got to have a plan for how you're going to handle it.
Yeah.
And then, so you've got to keep the letters separate. And then what you need to do is, and you need to have documentation of this as well, where you ask the seller or you let them know, okay, after they've made their decision, right? Okay, we received this letter from these buyers. Do you want to read it or not? And if they say yes, then you send it over. If they say no, which they probably will anyways, then you can just delete it and be done. But then you would have met the requirements for Washington state law.
Yeah.
You will have kept the letter, offered it to the seller, and they decline. And so then you would just want to have all of that documented in the file. Okay. And you want to have it documented in the file because, of course, and I don't think this would happen, but there are crazy things happening out there right now. So it's highly possible. Some buyer could become upset and then you would need to have that documentation that no, you never read the letter and the seller declined it too. So that's not that's not how the decision was made, you know?
Yep.
And then the other thing that everyone is recommending is that you either take notes or you have some sort of a way that you're documenting how your seller chose the offer that they chose.
Okay.
Hopefully it's going to be really simple and it's going to be just for the best terms or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Even if that's the case, then you've got to remember that you've got to upload all the offers that you've received. And then you're probably going to need to also upload to Transaction Desk something like a spreadsheet or something showing how you compared them all, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have done something to have reached the conclusion to choose the offer that you did. So just keep all of that documentation.
Okay.
And then now a new best practice that is optional, but I've begun doing because I can see how it's best, would be to what they call redact or black out the buyer's names and marital status. So of course, it's biggest on the first page, but the buyer's names are going to appear at the top of every single addendum.
Yeah.
So you've got to go through and use some sort of PDF editor, or you can upload it to Transaction Desk where it's going to need to be anyways. And you can mark it up and black out the names.
If you upload it there and you black out the names on there, can you then go delete them once the offer is chosen, or delete the blackouts?
Well, so when you're doing the markup feature, you can like save over the previous version, or you can save it as something else. So I would save it as something else and send that copy to your seller.
Okay.
The idea is that you want to black out the buyer's names and marital status before the seller sees it, just to make sure that they aren't basing their decision on any of that. So it's just sticking to the terms.
Yeah.
But then really in Transaction Desk, you don't need to keep a copy of that one with the blacked out stuff.
Right.
Well, actually, yeah, because you need to keep a copy of the offer as you received it. So you only need to keep one copy, but really it doesn't matter. I'm trying to think about this logistically now.
Well, if you email the copy with the blacked out, then you would have proof that that's what you emailed to them.
Yeah, that's what
you would just need
so maybe it's better to just save as the blacked out version. And then the only thing is, so like in your case, you're going to have, like in my case where I had 10 offers. I wasn't doing this then because I hadn't attended this class. But if I had been, I would have 10 copies of blacked out versions. And then I would have to have probably just my final copy that isn't blacked out with the offer that was accepted in all of those terms. That's probably what's best for the file. So if you're marking up in Transaction, just save over.
Okay.
Because if you ever need to go back to the original, you can go back to your email.
Yep.
And download a new fresh version without the blacked out names.
Yeah.
But the reason for all of this, and this has been discussed in a couple different classes and magazines I've been reading lately, that there's at least one case, it sounds like there might even be multiples, of buyers claiming discrimination based on their last name. And so that's why this best practice has kind of come about.
Yeah.
So it just creates some additional steps for a listing broker when you're receiving offers. Because like I know for myself, I've always just, like we kind of talked about with feedback, I tend to just forward the email as I get it directly from the broker. But if there were something that shouldn't be there, then I would delete it or whatever. But now that practice is out the door because I've got to download the offer, black it out and everything. But really, that's probably what's most fair. Because in a way, what my sellers might have been reading in those emails might have been swaying them one way or the other. Sure. So it keeps everything the same where they're really just looking at the terms of the offer.
Yeah.
And let me refer back to here. There was something. Covered that. I know that it can be hard for some sellers because some sellers, they do want to know something about the buyers. Like I know this about my townhome sellers in Tacoma, like there was one outstanding offer that they knew they should accept, but there was a second one where I can't remember what it was, but there was something about the buyer that they liked. And so I had to even remind them that it shouldn't be about the buyer. We really need to be focusing on the terms. And so sometimes you need to remind them of that, or sometimes it can come about when there's an offer from someone using VA financing, because then they're going to know they're a veteran, all that sort of stuff, So we just have to keep it focused on the terms.
Which that's not a protected class, right? They're veteran status, would it be?
It is. It's on that list. Yeah, veteran military status.
For federal?
For state.
Okay.
For state in Washington, I guess.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And then the thing is, and so see how I've seen this play out, and this happens frequently with other vets themselves, is they are sometimes willing to accept less to sell to another vet. But the whole thing is that shouldn't happen either.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sad, because I do agree with that, but that's preferential treatment then. So let me see if there's anything else that we didn't cover. I guess just really the other part of working with sellers now is to have communication with them about fair housing ahead of time, especially in this market where, they're likely to get multiple offers and perhaps get love letters, and let them know that love letters violate fair housing. So similar maybe to your conversation you'd have with buyers, but then let them know that we really don't want to receive them, and ask for their permission to put it in the listing that we don't receive letters. And then have that documentation uploaded in the file. And it can just be because, when you put in the broker to broker remarks, you can put it in there that the seller isn't going to review letters, and then the seller initials that page. So that would be your technical communication about that, as long as you've also had verbal communication with them about it too, and they understand that, right? But then that way you can have it in the listing. And that is really what is also best practice now, is to just put it up front in your listing that you're not going to review letters. Because otherwise, if you get them, then you've got to have this whole procedure for handling them. Even if you do have that note in the listing like I did, you still might get one and have to deal with it.
Sure.
Okay, let's see if we covered everything about. Yes, I think we did. Oh, there were some examples of some things that are kind of in a gray area where there could possibly be a claim, like, because there, and this is just kind of, I wanted to go over this because this provides examples of how sometimes you would think like something that's just said, it can be taken a lot further, because someone could say, well, I'm a master gardener and I will care for your lovely yard, right? Or I'm a wildlife enthusiast and I will feed your birds. Or, and I've seen this one, this is like a real one. I love mid-century homes. And so I won't remodel it. I'm going to keep its unique features, that sort of stuff. That's totally something sellers would go for, might be willing to accept less for. So just those sorts of things. And that's why we just have to stop all of it, unfortunately. And then there were some tips on beyond, like if a seller just won't listen, right, to what you say about fair housing and remaining compliant. You've got to remember that if a seller participates in it, then you as the broker and then us as the firm are also going to be liable too. And so we have to try to not answer questions about buyer characteristics, constantly be focusing on the terms and the facts. And let a seller know that if they're going to continue to ask questions about the buyers or vice versa, whatever, that because it's unlawful, you're going to terminate your relationship. I really hope that never happens.
Right.
I've never had it happen. But and then these were some important reminders, is that with our membership in the National Association of Realtors and everything, we will have to testify against our own client if they discriminate.
Yeah.
And so that would just not be a very good position.
Yeah.
So I would say just try to have conversations with your clients up front and try to get it resolved that way. Some other things to keep in mind as far as just treating everyone equally and fairly are to make sure that you're following the same process when you're like kind of qualifying your buyers, right? Make sure that you have consistent rules for yourself as far as how many times you're going to meet them or how many homes you're going to show them before they need to get pre-approved.
Yeah.
Because if there's variance there, then that could be considered discrimination on our part if we're participating in that, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to think. I think that I would probably just stick with the rule of, you know, the maximum I'm willing to show them is like 1 or 2 houses. And I would really only be doing 2 if they were close by each other, you know? It would be more for the meeting to get to know them and start building the relationship.
Yep.
But then you've got to remember, you've got to cut everybody off at the same time. And then also, if there really is somebody that isn't yet pre-qualified but really wants to see a home, then you've got to provide that service to them too. So you're providing everyone with the same equal service. And then when you have a listing, that you're providing the same information to everybody, that you're not, you know, keeping the facts and features to what they are.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's everything with fair housing. Very technical, not very fun.
No.
Do you have any questions before we move on to just more advertising things?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so with advertising, I think I'd emailed both you and Barbara earlier about how the, I put a copy of the Department of Licensing Advertising Guidelines in Dropbox. So you have access to it anytime and you don't have to go digging for it on the Department of Licensing website. Department of Licensing website is kind of hard to wade through.
Yeah.
And so it could be helpful, like if you have a question, you can just kind of go there and check it out. Okay. But we'll kind of go over the big things about advertising. So advertising includes any activity, public notice, or representation an industry professional makes or that someone makes on their behalf to promote the industry professional, their services, or the real property the professional is promoting. So examples of advertising would be all printed materials, so circulars, pamphlets, newspapers, magazines, brochures, handouts, flyers, websites, including websites controlled by the licensee, as well as websites that a licensee does not control, but on which the licensee's advertising is found. Social media accounts and profiles used to advertise the licensee's business or market real property. All promotional events, including open houses, billboards, television and radio commercials, signs, to include yard signs, sandwich board signs, directional arrows, all that. And then also business cards, letterhead, fax cover sheets if you use them, emails, text messages, and other promotional materials. So pretty much everything. That's all considered advertising.
Right.
Then all internet related advertising that consumers can view or experience as a separate unit. So for example, email messages or web pages. Those all require disclosure of the firm's name as licensed and disclosure of the broker's name as licensed. Then once an agency relationship has been established with the buyer or seller, the disclosure of the licensed firm or broker's name is no longer required. So it's just a reminder that when you're emailing or texting a new prospect, you need to include your name as licensed and the real estate firm's name. But then once you have a relationship, then, and I know I do this because I know I have a long email signature. I've got various signatures, so I just click none and then boom, nothing shows up because I don't need my email signature to appear on every single email. And you and Barbara probably noticed that too. I do it on like usually a first official thing, but then if we're going back and forth, I cut it out.
Yep.
You know? So then just as a reminder, we've communicated a bit about this already, that when using social media, disclosure of the firms and the broker's license name should be prominently displayed and easily understood and be no more than one click away from the viewable page. So contrary to what I think we'd communicated about before, and this is where there's different things out there, but it is not necessarily necessary to have RE/MAX leading professionals within your picture or within the text of your ad on social media for every post, as long as they can click your name, go to your profile, and then see your full name as licensed and the firm name.
Okay.
And so I know yours is like that. You say you're a realtor with RE/MAX leading professionals. I've checked your Facebook page, so you're totally fine. The thing to remember is that, and this was something, and I don't necessarily recommend that you and Barbara change this, but I can see now why some people's social media accounts have the firm's name included in them, right? Because if you did, well, then it's just going to be everywhere all the time. And it's probably better for branding and advertising anyways.
Yeah.
But when it isn't, then it's got to be in your profile description. And then it was pointed out that abbreviations, website addresses, email addresses, and hashtags, all these sorts of creative things don't necessarily work. You need to have just RE/MAX leading professionals somewhere, either on a picture, because it could be your cover page, right? Or your, not cover page, what's a cover photo?
Yeah.
Or within your profile, whatever. It's got to be the full firm name.
Okay.
So like, I think you might have seen within some documents I send, sometimes they do like RE/MAX LP or RLP for RE/MAX leading professionals. We can do that stuff in-house, but any advertising, like you couldn't even do RE/MAX leading pros.
Yeah.
Because that's shortening it. It has to be RE/MAX leading professionals.
Yeah.
But that's the good news, is that it doesn't need to necessarily be on every single thing that we create in Photofy or within the text, as long as you've got it in your profile. Because, and this is where there was some discrepancy as far as what's one click away and where are they going to click or whatever. So that's why I got clarification from Annie, and she said, as long as it's on the profile, then that's considered one click away. So we're good. So that's nice. I won't have to spend quite so much time trying to make sure it was appearing on everything.
Yeah.
Because I use a lot of stuff that's just RE/MAX branded, or that will have the RE/MAX logo type or the RE/MAX balloon and stuff. And so that's good. So then I guess, so any questions about advertising?
Nope.
So ethics. So this has come up recently. I didn't really pay that much attention to it, but now there's kind of talk about it, that it was recently passed by the National Association of Realtors Board. And so now all realtors are held to the code of ethics for all of their actions, not just those associated with their real estate activities. And so we're being warned that you've got to keep this in mind, like for your social media posts, even on like your personal accounts.
Okay.
So you've got to be aware of ethics on your personal Facebook and Instagram accounts. Not that I feel like I need to worry about you and Barbara. I don't.
People, though.
But just a reminder to just keep that in mind, because there are some realtors that have apparently posted some things that violate the code of ethics on their personal accounts. So it's just a reminder that that stuff is out there and can be seen, Yeah. And then another point was recently made up regarding ethics too, and that is about virtual staging, and how, there's a really good company that's one of RE/MAX approved suppliers, Box Brownie, that can either, they pride themselves on being able to take photos that maybe even we take on our iPhone or whatever, and then removing materials and items and things so that they don't look so cluttered. Or if a place is empty, putting furniture in and basically staging it and stuff. And so I guess there's questions about that now really being ethical. And so to avoid the questions about it and to make sure that you are being ethical. It's been said that best practices now are, okay, if you want to do that and include those photos, but then include photos of what it really looks like. So then when they get there, they know what it's going to look like. And you're basically just advertising what it could look like if it were less cluttered or if it were staged.
Okay.
But having both photos. And now we have 40 photos that we can include for each listing. So I would think there should be enough to do that with, because, you know, prior to that we had 25 and before that only 15. So we have more spots for photos now.
Yeah.
So just something to keep in mind if you're going to use a company like that. Personally, I always think it's best to just advertise it the way it is anyways. They're going to go out and see it. So then just some things to make sure that you avoid. So there's some legal and ethical pitfalls, kind of the most common ones that are out there right now. And the first one on the list is multiple offers. So we've just got to make sure that when we're representing buyers and sellers that we're handling multiple offer situations carefully, just to make sure we can avoid accusations of either negligence or preferential treatment that violates the federal, state, or local fair housing laws. And then the second, I guess, pitfall these days is seller disclosures. So just a reminder that, you know, if you or the seller are in doubt at all, it's just better to disclose it. So you got to put yourself in the buyer's shoes. And would you rather know about it up front or find out about it later, you know? And then with fair housing, we've been advised that, let's see, probably the best way is for me to just read this, that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has received funding to investigate discriminatory practices through controlled testing. So there are testers out there, and that if HUD testers find unconscious or blatant bias, so either one, it could be unconscious, due to the use of love letters or anything else, real estate professionals can be fined up to $50,000 for discriminatory practices. And that if that happens, like our E&O insurance carrier, let me know that they aren't going to cover us for that. So that would be on you. So I was like, oh gosh, I didn't realize that. There really are like testers out there.
Yeah.
And that's the fine, and E&O insurance isn't going to cover it.
Yeah.
So that's where, you know, if you guys ever have any questions at all about anything, I hope you both know you can always text or call me. I would rather talk it over with you and try to avoid legal issues, because legal issues are no fun at all. It's going to be a lot of stress. And then the other ones, the other pitfalls that are common these days are wire fraud. Still, you know, that's still happening. So just make sure that you're using that wire fraud notice that's available at the MLS. And then social media, people are out on social media finding violations with that. And so that was why I'd wanted to find out, okay, where does the whole firm name need to be used in every photo or what? But now at least we know it doesn't. But there's lots of violations with advertising on social media. And then also the do not call registry. There's a lot of complaints about that. So we've got to make sure we're checking that.
Yeah. With the do not call registry, this is just something I hadn't thought about. When I get numbers from like open house and stuff, do I have to run those numbers?
No, because they provided you with the phone number.
Okay.
So it's only if you are like
Cold calling
or calling an expired, you know, it's in the MLS. Of course, first you got to make sure they aren't relisted or didn't relist, and then you got to check the do not call registry. So anytime, and then like a Remax lead or anybody else you need or whatever, or like, because when you start to get listings, you know, you might get leads through Megaphone from Facebook or AdWorks, right? So anytime anyone provides their phone number, then no, it's fair game.
Okay.
So you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, that's a good question. So then to just kind of summarize everything, in general, you want to keep records of your advice that you give to clients and upload them to Transaction Desk as material correspondence. That's why I've given it its own folder for every transaction, because you might have a lot of stuff there, and that's fine. I've found that, and this goes back to when, you know, you and I were doing your one-on-ones in the fall. The Transaction Desk has improved even since the fall, because it used to take me a while. I would email stuff because you can use that email feature up at the top.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's really quick and easy now. I used to email and it'd sit there and I'd have to wait a few minutes. Now it's like immediate. I email them, I go in and they're there. So the email feature is really good. Basically what I do is I keep a folder of all my material correspondence for each client. And then when we're getting ready to close, I go in there and I just forward them all to that email. And then you can then they're all right there. And all you got to do then is they end up in the bottom of your main documents section. So then you can just check mark them all, go to the basket and move them to the material correspondence folder. But I just try to do it all at once at the end.
Yeah.
And for photos, but that's the tricky thing. When you email things, it doesn't include the photos, I don't think. So if you're doing
screenshots.
Yeah, I think you have to upload those directly. So with those, what I've done is, because then I also have most of my material correspondence is email, but if I have some via text, I save the pictures and then I just go in and I upload all the photos at once. Okay. And you can do that directly from the material correspondence folder. So you can be in there and you can upload a whole bunch at once and then it'll just be there. Is that how you do yours?
Yeah. And I've been keeping screenshots as I go usually. So like if I have a day where I communicated a lot with a buyer, I'll just upload that into a material correspondence folder that I have on my computer on Dropbox. And then I usually just upload it to transaction desk just so I remember to. Sometimes I'll wait like a week or something and then do a block of them, but that's been working for me.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And most of my communication has been via text. So most of it is screenshots of those texts. But I actually have just been doing screenshots of the emails as well, but it would be easier to just forward those.
Well, I don't know. If you're doing a lot of text, you're doing a lot of images, your screenshotting of emails is probably just as easy because then you've got them all in one folder and you can just upload them all at once.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. That's where, you guys can figure out whatever works easiest for you. And it's probably going to vary by client and transaction and stuff too, obviously, I don't want you spending a lot of time on that. So just do whatever works easiest.
Yep.
It's not necessarily a money producing activity, but at the same time, it's very important because if there's ever any questions or accusations or whatever, all we're going to have to go by is what's in that transaction desk file, at whatever. And then the other thing that, they say a lot, and I'm sure it's true, is you don't tend to get the accusations usually soon. They come like years later when you've moved on, you've sold a lot of other homes and you don't have your own personal files anymore, so. And then kind of the other key takeaway to kind of wrap things up is obviously if there's ever any legal issues that come up, you always want to recommend that your client seek legal counsel. And then of course, always immediately reach out to me too.
Yep.
So then we can figure out if there's anything else that we need to do on our end.
Yep.
So any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I feel like I covered a lot of information.
You did, and it's all like heavy stuff.
Yes, it's all heavy and boring stuff, but all very important because obviously I want to make sure we all stay out of trouble,
Yep, definitely.
So I think that's it. I'll go ahead and stop the recording.